Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our presentation on why diets don't work and sometimes they may kill me. My name is Dr. David Newman. I am the founder and director of Rose Heart Hypnotherapy Success Centers and the Rose Heart Healing Center. Let me tell you a story about Mary. Mary is a young lady. She's 32 years old, has two children, lives in the Maritimes of Canada. That's on the far eastern seaport. I found out about Mary's story because, with my wife being Canadian, I read a lot of the Canadian newspapers and publications online. Her letter appeared in the Globe and Mail, which is the nationwide newspaper of Canada. In the Globe and Mail, Mary wrote a letter to the editor, and what the letter said, and I will paraphrase, is that she had just returned from seeing her family physician, who gave her the bad news that for all these years that they've tried other forms of weight loss, nothing had worked. And the end result was as if she did not lose the weight that she needed to lose within the next 6 months, her weight was going to cost her her life and she was going to die. In the letter, she was talking to the editor because she had just come home and she expressed her feelings about getting this news. Now, of course, none of us would be happy with it, but in her particular case, it was very unique. She talked about her two children and the dreams and hopes and aspirations she had had. You see, the Maritimes are extremely poor. And like all parents, we always wish something better for our children. And she had hoped that she would see her children graduate high school. They were in elementary school at the time that she wrote the letter. To graduate high school and then maybe go on to university. Her daughter, she hoped, would meet a nice gentleman, would settle down, get married, maybe have a grandchild or two, and she dreamt about being there with that grandchild while she grew up, or he grew up, and then they would go to school and get married, and she kind of had her life set there. It wasn't overly grandiose, but it was a good life. And now she explained to the editor that she doesn't know what to do because she's sitting there at the kitchen table, penning this letter, trying to think of what to tell her children when they come home from school that mommy's not going to be there for Christmas. And there's nothing that mommy can do about it. You see, the doctor told her that she had 6 months to live, and he was going to put her on a bariatric list to immediately have the surgery, or as quick as they could. Unfortunately, Canada had a 5-year waiting list, and she only had 6 months to live. Her only alternative was to go to the United States, where they don't have a waiting list, and get the bariatric surgery she so desperately needed, then return home. Unfortunately, Mary just didn't have the resources for that. And so, as Mary continued in her letter, she recounted all of the things that she had done or tried to do. It just simply didn't work. And so, as she listed some of the diets that she had gone on, and this slide I've listed some of them plus a few more. These are all diets that are very popular. We read about them, we hear about them on the talk show, but the reality of the situation is they don't work. And it's not that they don't work immediately. You can go on any one of these diets and you will lose 15, 20, 30, 40 or more pounds. The problem is keeping it off. And why? And then I started doing some research and I really started looking hard at the weight loss industry. The weight loss industry is an $86 billion industry that is built upon failure, not success. As I continued doing the research, I found that I was hit with a lot of closed doors at getting specifics. But one of the things that I did find out is some of the weight loss franchises are publicly owned corporations, which means that they have to produce an annual report. And when I requested those annual reports, I received them, and I was surprised at some of the largest weight loss industry leaders, the giants in the weight loss industry. When you boil it right down to it and you read their own numbers, they have a 1% success rate. Well, what happens to the other 99%? And what I realized is that we're on a revolving door. We'll go to, for example, Jenny Craig. We'll lose the weight, we start gaining it back. Then we go to Weight Watchers. We lose the weight, we gain it back. Then we go over to Nutrisystems. We lose the weight, we gain it back. Then we go over to our local gym or the YMCA and we get with a personal trainer and we're going to really, bust our butts and we're going to do this. We lose the weight, then we gain it back. And it's constantly a revolving door. And at some point, we actually go in to the people in the white coats and ask for medical intervention. And what they do is they come back and they say, well, sure, we can help you provided you meet certain criteria. You have to have a body mass index of over 40 or above, which is not too terribly difficult to do. Have to be 100 pounds or more overweight. Again, in North America, that's not overly difficult to have. And then we can look at you as medical doctors and say we can give you gastric bypass, a gastric Y, a gastric sleeve, or the gastric lap band. All of these are very invasive. All of them have extreme complications, extreme risks that some go into in depth and others don't. But the gastric bypass, the gastric Y, and the gastric sleeve are considered absolutely irreversible. And in other words, once you have them, that's it. You are permanently altered. And the problem is all four of these medical intervention surgeries, the gastric bypass, the gastric Y, the gastric sleeve, and the gastric lap band, only have a 30% success rate over 7 years. What does that mean? That means that you have what is known in the industry as a blowout. Yeah, you've lost the weight, you've got new wardrobe, you may have even had plastic surgery to take off the excess skin, and then you start gaining the weight back on, and it comes on with a vengeance, and no matter what you do, you can't stop it. With the gastric bypass, the gastric Y, and the gastric sleeve, you can only eat 3 ounces of food at a sitting. So it's not like you can cut back. We can't reduce those calories down much more. 3 ounces of food, you're pretty close to starvation level. So there's got to be a better answer. As I continued doing the work, I wanted to look at the costs. What does it really cost to have this done? And the costs are all over the map. But what we did find out is on the average, it costs about $20,000 to have the surgery, and that includes the surgeon's time, the anesthesiologist's time, the hospital time, follow-up visits. This $20,000 does not include supplements that you will have to buy, the annual checks that you're going to have for the rest of your life, nutritionist fees that you're going to incur for the rest of your life, gym memberships that you'll have for the rest of your life, or any of the other little sundry items that they don't really talk about. They kind of skip over it a little bit. But anyway, $20,000, that's quite a bit of money. Now, of course, here in the United States, most of us turn to the insurance companies and we expect them to flip the bill with that. However, under the new Affordable Health Care Act, we don't know exactly where that's going. But $20,000 is still a whole lot. If we look at the more traditional franchise methods, you're still looking at dropping in the ballpark of between $1,700 and $3,000 per program each time you do it to lose the weight that you want to. So I looked at it as subconscious behaviors, as a neuroscientist. There has to be a better way. And here's what I found. You see, when we're born, we have a little mechanism in our brain, and it tells us when to stop eating. And when it tells us to stop eating, we stop. Now, for those of us that have had children, for those of you that haven't had children, you probably know someone who does. When you've got that little tyke and you're trying to feed it, they sometimes get a little fussy, but when they get full, they get very fussy and they start turning their face away. They don't want that last bite. But as parents, we know what's best. We don't want to waste the food. We shove that last bite in there. And then something truly unique happens. That last bite comes out. And it comes out in the form of regurgitation. In other words, that kid blows chunks or that kid spits it out. Either way, there's a mechanism in our brain that says, do not eat it. Well, where does this mechanism come from? That mechanism actually comes from the subconscious, and the subconscious part of our mind controls everything. It controls our hunger levels. It also controls our hormone levels. It controls our metabolism. It controls every aspect of our body that we don't consciously think about, and that includes respiration and our heartbeat. So what do we have to do? Well, over the years, the authority figures in our lives, from 0 to age 14, have taught us everything, and this forms what we refer to as a life script. It starts at 0, the moment that we first become aware of anything, and it's pretty well cast in stone by age of 14. And here's some of the things that our subconscious life script will tell us. It'll tell us the type of jobs that we'll have, how much money we'll earn, the type of housing we'll live in. It'll tell us the type of friends that we'll have and we don't have, the type of work that we consider acceptable or not, how we form business relationships and personal relationships, the type of person that we'll get romantically involved with, and just about every other aspect that you can think of. So one of the things that I thought about is we have to do something with this subconscious life script. Now, if you go to psychologists and psychiatrists, the first thing that a psychiatrist wants to do is put you on some sort of medication. Why is that? Well, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor, an MD, and as such, they are trained in med school to look at symptoms and provide a pharmaceutical that will simply mask those symptoms. It doesn't fix the issue. A psychologist will sit down there and try to help you with the issue through traditional talk therapy, which really simply reinforces the bad side and the negative feelings that you have, lowering your self-esteem. So, what is the real secret? Well, the real secret for us is to sit down there and to rewrite our subconscious life script and fix all of the bad habits that we've gotten into that we don't think about it, and reconnect that little mechanism in our subconscious that tells us when to eat and when not to eat. I'm very pleased to announce that we've done that. And we did that in 2007 with a therapy called the Neuro LapBand therapy. Neuro LapBand therapy is kind of interesting because what I did was create this therapy specifically for Mary. Mary needed to find a way to live, and she didn't have $20,000 to get the surgery she needed to maintain her life. The Neuro LapBand provides all of the positive attributes of having a lap band surgery with none of the negative side effects. There is no side effect. It cannot kill you. It's non-invasive. You have the therapy done, you get up and you walk out. Now, what we do with the therapy is we follow the person, and we follow them for a full 7 years. Why? Because we're rewriting that life script. We're getting it so the person no longer has to think about what they eat or how much they eat. They simply eat when they're hungry. They stop eating when they're not hungry. And there's no special foods, there's no special supplements that they have to have. They can eat anything. They can go into any restaurant and eat. They can go home and eat. They can go to a neighbor's and eat. It doesn't matter. No special foods. Over the years, we perfected the Neuro LapBand. And it was very, very specific because we created the Neuro LapBand with the help of some very forward-thinking bariatric surgeons that are here in Missouri, and also with a couple of very forward-thinking physicians that are down at the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. And they actually helped me design this so that it would be totally safe. The weight would come off. The skin would maintain its elasticity. In other words, it would shrink, not all the way, but the person's not going to necessarily have to have plastic surgery. Unfortunately, when we perfected this, we got it. I went out to track Mary down, and I found Mary's family. Unfortunately, Mary had died 3 weeks before I was ready to go public with the Neuro LapBand. So in Mary's honor, we've continued the Neuro LapBand. But here's what I've noticed. In North America, not everyone is 100 pounds or more overweight. Not everybody has a BMI of 40 and above. But yet, the weight loss system is still the same. They're going to the franchises, they lose the weight, then they come back and they add in the weight that they lost, plus another 20 to 30 pounds more. And this continues every time. So they're always adding 20 to 30 pounds more than where they started. So there has to be a reason for that. And here's what we found out with the subconscious. The subconscious, as we know, is very primordial. It only knows things as they applied in the beginning. We were intended to be hunters and gatherers. We were intended to constantly be on the move. When we found food, we ate it. If there was no food, we continued moving. Pretty simple. So what we found out is that our brains are wired for us to eat small amounts of food every 2 hours. Our food needs to be primarily higher in protein, lower on refined carbohydrates. Now, everything that we eat has carbohydrates in it, so I cannot ever put a person on a 0 carbohydrate diet. It just doesn't work. Everything has a carbohydrate in it. But what we're looking at is getting rid of the refined carbohydrates and going with the natural carbohydrates. So primarily protein, lots of fruits and vegetables in moderation. Everything's in moderation. Eating every 2 hours. Sounds pretty simple, huh? You're never hungry. You never have cravings. So that sounds pretty good. And over a period of time, you will lose the weight. Well, our specific program was designed for you to lose between a pound to a pound and a half of weight a week. Now, the doctors told me that it's very important for us to only lose between a pound to a pound and a half a week because that way we're losing fat. When we lose weight quickly, we are losing lean muscle. The subconscious will hold that fat back and it will literally devour its own body to save the fat as the last line of defense because the subconscious only knows two things. It knows the time of plenty when there's lots of food and we're eating a lot, and then it knows time of famine when we're going way back on our calories. And when we go way back on our calories, it takes the subconscious a little bit of time to adjust to it. But what it starts doing is adjusting our metabolism, it adjusts our energy level, so we go into a conservation mode. We do not want to expend the energy. So whatever we had to meet certain criteria. The Neuro LapBand had to sit down there and be cost effective. It is. It had to keep our energy levels high. It does. It had to provide us plenty of nutrients. It does. And it had to provide us the calories that our body requires. It does. So let's take a look at a couple of things, and this is what we found out. The cost of actually doing the weight loss. I've listed the big ones, okay? Now you see the Mini Neuro LapBand. That's the procedure we're talking about now because it has lifted the restrictions for people. You don't have to have a BMI of 40 or more. You don't have to be 100 pounds or more overweight. The Mini Neuro LapBand costs $1,400 total, and we continue following you for a full 3 years. That means all of your therapy sessions, everything that you need is included for a full 3 years. The weight comes off, it stays off, and you will never, ever again have a weight loss issue. The weight loss programs, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, Nutrisystems, and the list goes on and on. They run the gambit from $1,700 to about $3,000. The HGC diet, that's using the hormones in either injections or drops. Very dangerous diet. It keeps you at a 500 calorie a day total caloric intake. That's below starvation. So, of course, your subconscious is going to get involved very, very quickly. Your energy levels are going to drop. You're going to have all types of issues. The weight will come off, but as soon as you go off of this, it's going to go up, and it's going to go up dramatically. But that runs right about $4,500, a little bit more depending on where you're looking at. New Direction. New Direction is a medically supervised, or supposed to be medically supervised, weight loss method that used to be known as MetaFast. Now they found out just drinking the protein shakes is really not healthy for you at all, so they tried to mix in a few more foods, but the end result is still the same. You're on a 500 calorie a day diet. It's very, very restrictive. You have to do things, and it's also very, very expensive. It's running the gambit of about $10,000 to $12,000. And then we have surgery. On the cheap end of it, you have the lap band surgery. And on the more expensive end of it, you have your gastric Y, your gastric sleeve, and your gastric bypass. Those run around $20,000. You can actually get lap band surgery done in the ballpark of around $15,000, but that doesn't include a lot of the other things that you may, need, like nutritional supplements, gym memberships, nutritionists, things like that. When you come in for a Neuro LapBand, what you find is a non-invasive system. You simply go into hypnosis. We take you into hypnosis. We monitor a lot of things. And from your subconscious point of view, what we find out is that your subconscious thinks you're actually having the surgery done. So what happens? Our client here is a perfect example. She clearly remembered going in to the healing center. She remembered changing into a hospital gown. She remembered talking to an anesthesiologist. She remembered the IV that was injected. She remembered being rolled down the hall to the operating theater. She remembers hearing and seeing medical equipment, hearing doctors and medical techs talking back and forth. She remembered hearing her actual heartbeat, which is kind of interesting. She remembered feeling some things but no pain, but she did feel things a little weird in her abdomen as we went through the procedure. And the procedure is done exactly as if the invasive procedure was done. So you're hearing everything this way that would actually be done in an operating theater. What are our results? Well, I'm kind of proud to sit down there and say that our results are a full 94.3 success rate. That's a long cry from the 30% that is the standard, or the 1% that is the standard within the weight loss industry as a whole. No side effects other than the weight loss. Energy level is high, no mood swings, nothing dangerous about it, totally safe, and we follow you for a full 3 years. That concludes our presentation today. Please feel free to come up afterwards and talk to me. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions, or you can write to me at david@mohyp.com. I'll be happy to answer all of your questions if you send them to me. As always, this presentation was sponsored by the International Council of Professional Therapists. And for those therapists in the room today, we do have continuing education credits available for you. Just see the person at the front desk. Thank you very much and have a great day.